as brothers of Sigma Phi Epsilon,
and as sisters of Alpha Delta Pi,
as fraternity men,
and sorority women.
We have a responsibility to our society, student body, and friends.
to our fraternity brothers,
And our sorority sisters.
I took an oath.
I took an oath.
I took an oath.
We all took an oath.
And we take that oath seriously.
If you've been paying attention, you know there's a problem on college campuses today, a problem that affects all students.
a serious problem, sexual assault and sexual misconduct.
And we're here to talk about how we can be a part of the solution.
We're here to talk about how to prevent sexual assault.
To prevent sexual assault.
But preventing it means understanding what's going on.
And deciding that we care enough to stand up and say no.
Not in my sorority house.
Not in my fraternity house.
Not on our teams.
Not in our residence halls.
No, this is not okay on my campus.
Not all sexual assaults occur in back alleys.
They aren't always committed by a repeat offender.
9 out of 10 sexual assaults are committed by someone the victim knows.
State and federal laws are being passed requiring colleges and universities to change their policies in an effort to make us all safer.
If you're going to have sex, you have the responsibility to know the expectations on your campus.
Sexual assault is any type of sexual contact or behavior that occurs without the explicit consent of the recipient.
That means sexual assault is any unwanted sexual contact.
But do you know when it's not wanted? Think hard about this, because everything you thought you knew might not be true.
When a girl asks you to hang out or go back to her place, it doesn't give you consent to make out, it gives you consent to hang out.
When you ask someone to watch a movie, you have consent to watch a movie.
And that definitely does not mean you have consent to have sex.
It's on us to keep our brothers and our sisters safe and to get clear on consent.
If you don't know what consent is and how to ask for it, you shouldn't be having sex.
Consent is the voluntary, positive agreement between participants to engage in a specific sexual activity.
That cannot be compelled by threat, force, coercion, or deception.
If you have consent this weekend, it does not mean that you have consent next weekend.
Consent only applies to a specific act. It does not mean you're going all the way.
Consent cannot be given if the person granting it is underage, mentally incapacitated, intoxicated, or under the influence of other drugs.
Just because somebody's flirting with you or hitting on you doesn't mean you have consent.
Sometimes flirting is just flirting, and that's definitely not consent.
Someone can be interested in you sexually and be giving you all the signs that they might want to have sex with you.
But that doesn't mean they actually want to have sex with you.
And if you have sex without consent, it's assault.
It's rape.
It's important to understand your campus policies before you have sex.
Reach out to your fraternity and sorority life advisor or your student conduct office to determine your campus's policies regarding consent.
And then share those policies with your brothers and sisters.
Let's unpack two of the more common campus policies regarding consent and the consumption of alcohol. The no alcohol policy and the incapacitation standard. These are not the only policies on college campuses, but they are what a number of campuses are using today.
The no alcohol policy. With a campus policy like this, from the moment someone consumes any alcohol, that person is no longer able to provide valid consent to engage in any type of sexual activity for the period of time that alcohol is in your system. So, if your campus does have this policy, it is very black and white. If you or your sexual partner have been drinking, then you cannot provide valid consent for that sexual encounter.
The Incapacitation Standard. With a campus policy like this, even if they have been drinking, individuals are able to participate in sexual activity and give valid consent, unless one or both of the individuals are or become incapacitated.
Incapacitation is the inability, temporarily or permanently, to give consent because the individual is mentally and/or physically impaired due to alcohol or other drug consumption, either voluntarily or involuntarily, or the individual is unconscious, asleep, or otherwise unaware that the sexual activity is occurring. Incapacitation is a state beyond drunkenness or intoxication. Some indicators of incapacitation may include, but are not limited to, lack of control over physical movements, being unaware of circumstances or surroundings, or being unable to communicate for any reason. While this standard may seem a bit less black and white, it does allow for college students to give valid consent when one or both parties have been consuming a moderate amount of alcohol.
But when one party crosses the threshold from buzzed, drunk, or intoxicated to incapacitated, then valid consent can no longer be given. And any previous consent given for that sexual encounter is now no longer valid.
With this policy, it is important to understand that if a sexual assault complaint results from a sexual encounter where one or both partners were under the influence of alcohol, the investigation and ultimate determination of whether someone was incapacitated will not be made by you. It will be made by a third party.
An administrator, a hearing panel, or a Title IX coordinator will determine if you were incapacitated, or if a reasonable person would have known that the person that you were with was incapacitated.
Now, in order to make all of this a bit easier to remember, in order for consent to be given, it must be able to be taken away.
That means that at the moment of the night when your partner's decision-making becomes impaired, even if consent was given, it is no longer valid.
And remember, your campus policies are still there, even when you're headed to formal and the beach.
Please contact your campus conduct officer to determine your campus's policies on consent and consent when consuming alcohol.
Then share these policies with your chapter. Saying, "I didn't know that was our policy," is not considered an acceptable explanation when involved in a campus conduct hearing. And remember, it is never okay to blame the survivor.
There are fraternity men and sorority women across the country whose lives have been forever changed because of one choice.
One question they didn't ask.
And their lives will never be the same because of that one night.
Because no one stepped in to help them.
It's on all of us, men and women, to be responsible and ask for consent.
Men need to be direct about what they want and not assume anything.
And women need to be open and honest about what they want or what they don't want.
It's not always the guy's responsibility to ask.
Women must be a part of the conversation too.
Be direct in your questioning. Actually ask the person, do you want to have sex?
Do you want to have sex?
Do not ask if they want to hook up.
Because hooking up doesn't mean the same thing for everyone.
Just be direct and ask. If you're too embarrassed to ask, just imagine how embarrassed you'd be if someone knew you committed sexual assault.
If someone says no, it means no.
Yes means yes, and no means no.
The absence of a no does not mean yes. That also means no.
And you just can't start making out with someone and continue to push the limits until they say no.
You have to ask along the way and respect each one of their decisions.
If I say no, respect my decision.
If I say yes at first and then want to stop, respect my decision.
If I say no, respect my decision.
Consent starts and ends with direct communication.
It's on us to stop sexual assault, and we can be a part of the solution.
But it starts with you.
With me.
With me.
With me.
It starts with all of us.
Remember, in order for consent to be given, it must be able to be taken away.
Policies on consent and alcohol consumption vary from campus to campus. Work to determine your policies on consent and then share those with your chapter members.
Consent must be direct and ongoing.
And don't assume anything. Not everyone is having sex.
As fraternity men and sorority women, we took our oath as an individual.
But as a group, we can and will be a part of the solution.
By educating ourselves, our chapters, and the community.
We have the opportunity to truly make a difference in the lives of our brothers, our sisters, our sons, our daughters, and the future.
Preventing sexual misconduct and assaults on campus is part of living our oaths.
Let's end this problem once and for all.
Live your oath.
Live your oath.
Live your oath!
A little over a year ago, ADPI's Grand Council and SIGEP's National Board of Directors formed a partnership to allow men and women to have a conversation about sexual assault prevention. To come together to discuss consent, healthy relationships, positive intervention, and how we as fraternity men and sorority women can be a part of the solution on our campuses. We believe that sexual assault prevention is truly a part of living our oath.
We challenge you to gather your chapter or chapters together to watch this new version of the Live Your Oath educational video, and then work through the discussion questions provided.
If you are an executive officer, we ask that your entire chapter be present
and that all members walk away from these conversations knowing more about your campus policy on consent and consent when consuming alcohol. This year, we are providing updated information specifically addressing the topic of consent when alcohol is involved. So even if your chapter watched the video last year as a group, there is a need to do so again. We challenge you to spend some time as a group discussing ways that you can confidently intervene when you see someone who cannot give valid consent. Your brothers and sisters should leave this conversation both educated and empowered.
If you feel uncomfortable leading this discussion, you may want to ask your chapter advisor or chapter counselor for help, as for many of us, the concepts and ideas seen in this video may be brand new. Your campus fraternity and sorority life advisor or headquarters staff may also be engaged to help lead this important discussion. For any member that struggles with this topic, please help them first find a place of understanding. And for those brothers and sisters who are survivors, ensure they know there are resources on our host campuses and in our communities to help support them.
Just as thousands of you did last year, upon completion of those conversations, we challenge all of our chapters to take a photo with the I Took an Oath cards provided and post that commitment on social media with the Live Your Oath hashtag.
If you have both chapters on your campus, we encourage you to take that photo together. And remember, this conversation does not have to be limited to SIGEP and 80 Pi. Please reach out to your other interfraternal partners and ask them to participate as well.
As members of SIGEP and 80 Pi, living our oath
and our creed
should be more than taking a picture and posting it on Facebook and Instagram. It should be a commitment to live that oath daily.
We are both so proud to be part of organizations that passionately believe that fraternity and sorority done right can be life-changing.
Join with us in showing the world that our organizations are committed to ending this problem once and for all, and that it can begin by doing what we've already said we would do. Live your oath.
Live your oath.